We've got full steam ahead with some wonderful local educators. I'm going to have you ladies introduce yourselves if you'll unmute yourselves. And we'll have you introduce yourselves. Start with Paige, and we'll go around the room. And we have Adam here in studio. He's going to be our moderator. And after you introduce yourselves, he's going to guide our conversation.
Hey everybody, my name is Paige Colwell. I am one of the art teachers at McKinley Middle Magnet, and we use a lot of technology in our art classes.
Hello everyone, I am Allie Rhodes, known as Miss Rhodes in the educational world. I teach at McKinley Middle Magnet as well. I'm a 6th grade science teacher, and this is my 6th year in education.
I wonder. Thanks. Julia?
Hi, I'm Julia. I run Novak's youth programming, and so we deliver digital media education across Southeast Louisiana. And so we're teaching technology and art blended.
Natalie?
Hi, y'all. I'm Natalie Roy. I am the 2021 Louisiana State Teacher of the Year. I teach at, thank you, I teach at Glasgow Middle, and my technology is a little bit more unusual, but I teach a STEM class called Roman Technology. And in this class, we use ancient tools, just like the Romans did, to reproduce the products and processes of daily life in ancient times. We do use, of course, modern technology as well to deliver our curriculum. But one of my particular challenges this year has been how to translate such a class in a home environment, because half my students are still hybrid.
And Rain.
Hey. Hi guys, I'm Rain, known in the educational world as Mix A, because I can't say my last name, is Araneda. And I'm really excited to be here with everybody. I teach engineering and science, AP Environmental Science. I'm a big environmental fan and background in environmental engineering. So that's what I do at Bel Air Magnet Creative Arts and Sciences High School. And I and Ms. Roy were also STEM Fellows together for the East Baton Rouge STEM Fellows program. So I'm excited for everyone to get to hear the amazing things that I saw from her when we were in the program together.
And I'm Adam St. Pierre. I'm here over at the library. I'll be the moderator for this discussion. Thank you, ladies, for all being here today. All right, so today's topic is full steam ahead, teaching for tomorrow today. So we're all talking about those 21st century skills, and all of you guys are engaged in those in different ways. So I'm going to kick it off with a kind of an easy one. What does STEAM exactly mean to you? Yes, it's science, technology, engineering, arts, and math, but what does it mean to you besides just that acronym? I'm going to go ahead and start with Rain and go backwards to Paige.
Okay, for me, so when I got involved with teaching and in engineering, STEM was the acronym, and I'm really excited that art has been included in it, because I think, especially for me as a former engineer and who still does engineering on the side with Engineers Without Borders, I get really frustrated when people assume that it's just about math and science. I consider myself a designer before anything else. And that means creativity. It means innovation. And so for me, STEAM is really about looking at the tools of math and science in a way that's applicable towards creativity and innovation. And that could be for art, it could be for engineering, it could be for landscape architecture, your garden, it doesn't matter. But including that A is extremely important. And I think making that connection so that people are not seeing it as so much of an isolated field for STEM where it's computers, it's engineering. Graphic design is very technologically focused, but it's also creative. So that's what STEAM is to me. It's that intersection of the beauty of creativity with the tools of efficiency. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Oh, and also just shout out to the fact that this is an all ladies panel in STEM. What up? Just gonna say that.
Agreed. Fantastic to have all ladies on the call. Natalie, yes.
Okay, so I'm going to throw it back to the Romans. When we think about the Romans, we always, think about their amazing designs, their engineering, right? Like aqueducts and all the stuff that has come down to us through the years. But I brought home a few things to share with y'all today, because one of the first things we started with was more of a STEAM project in my class, and normally for this type, which is mosaics. And normally for this type of project, y'all, we actually use like these real mosaic hammers, okay, in my classroom. This is the Hardy. These things are really heavy, y'all. This is the thing we use to, the Hardy is like a wedge that you use with the hammer. And my students actually use these tools. But the thing that most people don't realize is that there's a whole lot of design in mosaics. Okay, so this is one of the paper mosaics that we created. Now, of course, there's lots of math in this, because of course we had to measure everything, we had to count it out, we had to make sure that it would fit on the page that we had. So there was, a lot of course, the typical STEM stuff in that. But then there's also the idea of, the colors we used and the design of it. So that's our art piece. And a lot of that can be found in Roman technology. I mean, it's not just about the STEM aspects. The Romans are just as well remembered for the beauty of their designs and not just the engineering.
Those are beautiful. Thank you, Natalie. Julia.
Yeah, so I'm a little opposite, I guess, than Rain, where I'm an art, like my background is art and design. So when I think of STEAM, I think of like creative problem solving and design thinking. And like, because I had an art background in college and undergrad, like I was able to take engineering classes. And I think the two are like very integral. Like if you think about color theory and color science and how we observe like behavioral science and like understanding how to motivate people like that, the golden ratio is all rooted in math. And so I like that they added the A, and to me, I've always seen it that way. And so I think you can't really have any of the acronyms in an isolated context.
I definitely agree. The A is probably one of the most important things in there, and the folks that don't include the A are wrong. Sorry, not sorry. But let me kick it over to Allie.
So STEM and STEAM to me, basically I've been bred in all of the letters. So when I was growing up, I wanted to be an artist. My dad is an engineer. My mom is a teacher. So I ended up being hybrid of everything above. My degree is actually in biochemistry. So as a science teacher, I'm able to take things that I'm passionate about and my content knowledge from being a biochemist and bring it into the classroom. And being a sixth grade science teacher, this is the first time that my students have ever gotten to be in a real lab with real science experiments and get their hands dirty and dive straight into content with our new NGSS standards. So it's really important for me as an educator to teach them how the world works around them biologically and chemically. Also how to incorporate modern technology into that and prepare them for careers in any STEAM field, but also to have them understand the world around them in a creative sense too, and giving them that space to learn and grow while having that artistic outlet. I think that's really important as well.
Excellent. Kick it over to Paige real quick.
So I'm going to kind of pick up with what Julia was saying, because I also come from an art background. So my kids, most of the time when they come to me, they come to an art class and they think, well, I don't know how to draw, or the only art that they've really been exposed to is like, your typical like Van Gogh or Frida Kahlo, and all that is great and fine. But what I try to do in my class is teach them that art goes into all of these different fields and that they are related to all of these different fields. If you
I think we had a little bit of a cut with Paige right there, but that's okay. We're gonna come back to her in just a moment. Paige, are you still there? Well, that's okay. We'll come back to Paige on the next go round of questions, kind of tying into this one that we've got here. Paige, you back with us? I can't seem to hear you.
Can you hear me now?
I can.
Uh-oh.
I can. Yes. Okay.
Hey! Okay. I was talking about making sure that they understand that all of these jobs in the arts are connected to science and technology and math. So I owned a t-shirt company for a little while, and in doing that, I still have all of my stuff that I bought all the equipment for my company when we shut down. And so my kids learned how to do all the math that goes into designing a t-shirt, because there's a lot of math that goes into that. And using the actual technology, because there's specific technology that you have to use to plot out a vinyl cutter. And I'm not talking like a small little vinyl cutter. I'm talking a big industrial vinyl cutter. So there's a lot of math and science and technology that goes into the things that they learn in art, and it usually blows their mind because they don't realize that, yes, you want to, play basketball, but that is still connected to the arts, because that's how you train your hand-eye coordination and things like that.
Fantastic. All great. Everybody's touching on the complete blend of all of the different parts of the acronym of STEAM, because none of it's tied together. So I guess that really leads me to my next question, which a lot of you guys have already touched on. But for each lesson or each sit down you have with your high school students, your middle school students, or any of the people in film camps and whatnot, how do you try and tie all those letters together? Or how do you all try to tie everything together in each one of those? We'll start with Rain and go backwards.
Okay, so I'm going to throw out a bunch of terms that are popular in the world right now of teaching, and especially at my school, is project-based learning. So I think Julia had mentioned design thinking, and that's huge. It's really the part that pulls it all together, because you're going from the research aspect to the brainstorming aspect to looking at other people's minds and how they think and incorporating all of that, and then building. And so then the building brings in the math and the science and kind of like those finite details that you have to focus on. Once you're done with the fun creative part, you really have to like hone in and iterate. So for me, project-based learning is the best way to really do that. And I'm glad that that's a big push right now in education. I think that's the best way to apply the real world skills that they need to learn and to utilize those 21st century skills, which include the verbal skills and the presentation skills and those soft skills that they're going to need for their career. So it kind of includes everything that they really need to have.
Excellent. Natalie?
I'm also going to add, I agree with everything Rain said on that. It's so important to have kids in the process with you. In my classes, we start with the ancient world, and that's how I kind of plan backwards. I always start with something from Roman daily life, or in my myth makers class, we use an ancient myth to spark a maker project. So making is another term that's big right now in the educational world. And it just means tinkering, just learning how to take materials that you have and make something out of them that is useful or creative. And I think that is so important. It helps to draw all those letters together, because no matter where you start with that plan, you can always figure out a way to put all that stuff together. And as a teacher, that's your job to make that happen, to connect all those dots before you bring it to the kids. And I will tell you now, it's one of my favorite parts of teaching is, thinking through those thoughts and getting those concepts all together in one project that I can present to the kids. And I just love it.
Julia?
So I think whether it's design or film production, that I think science, technology, engineering, arts, math are prevalent in every step of every phase. And so I think when we're designing lessons and camps and experiences, we really focus on emphasizing the process just as much as the output, and really thinking through like framing, lighting, sound, and then connecting that to different emotions or what you're trying to achieve, so that I think is really how we focus on yeah, incorporating it into our lessons.
Beautiful, beautiful. Allison.
And I totally agree with what everybody has said so far. And it makes me so happy and my teacher heart really happy to see a panel of passionate educators and people who are out in the field working every day to make our students better people. So as a teacher and a science teacher, it's really easy to make science, technology, math, and engineering connections. The challenge for me in my classroom is how to make the artistic connections to science, because kids think that science is science, math is math, engineering is engineering, technology is technology, art is art. They don't see that all of these things are woven together in our everyday lives. So one of my favorite things to do as an educator is just bring in real world examples and challenge their thought process. So for example, right now, my sixth graders are learning all about light and how light works. And they are very intrigued to learn that white light is made up of all of the colors of light, but pigment is opposite from light. So they're learning all about color in the process of a basic science lesson. And we're taking it even further into theater and how to use stage direction lighting and how all of those colors play into a performance. So it's just flipping the script on traditional science lessons, putting their minds and their creative processes in different ways and challenge them to apply everything that we've learned scientifically in the real world, which is really awesome.
I am loving this conversation and all of these different connections between all of the different parts of STEAM and how we are helping our kids learn for 21st century skills. Paige, can you close us out on this part?
So I'm going to touch on what Rain and Julia said. Project-based is big. Project-based was always how art classes ran anyways, because, you know, that's just how it works. And in my project-based lesson plans, it is more focused on the process. So one of the first STEAM lessons that I do with the kids is one, of course, color, which I want to thank Miss Rhodes, because we do cross-curricular stuff all the time at McKinley. So our science and art department usually link up and are teaching color and stuff at the same time, so we can kind of tag team that. And then I take them into watercolor, and instead of focusing on doing a watercolor painting, for the first week we focus on what are the chemical reactions that happen with watercolor that you can use to create different textures in your painting. So what happens when you pour salt on it? What happens when you pour alcohol on it? And things like that. And usually, you know, they get really excited about this, because it's literally just them playing with a bunch of materials and seeing what they do. So that's, you have to make it's exploratory. That's the only way that they learn.
I'm seeing a lot of head nodding and finger snapping and agreement between everyone, and I'm loving this. So I want to touch on what Paige said and Julia mentioned, and so did Rain, about project-based learning. And, you know, that's a big thing that's happening in makerspaces and in schools and everywhere, and it's always been a part of any sort of arts program, whether it be in a school or outside of the traditional school. So I want you guys to think about a project-based project that you did with your students or with your kids, and what was like the best one that you can think of off the top of your head. It doesn't necessarily have to be one that turned out amazingly. It could have been the one where people iterated a whole lot and failed, and it was the most interesting. Just the first thing that you can think of. I'm gonna hit it with Rain first.
Okay, that's like so hard. So hard. I think one of my favorite things that I've seen my kids do that they've completed, because there's like a couple things I'm thinking of that we kind of didn't get to finish because of COVID, and it was really fun up until that point, and I still don't know how we're gonna make that work. But last year, when I first got to Villarreal, we did a project with simple machines. So they had to design a pulley system to pull themselves up on the JROTC bars. And they could use whatever material, but they had to basically repurpose everything. I didn't want them buying a lot of stuff, because that's not really in their abilities anyway. And so it was really fun. They were taking apart bikes and all kinds of things to like scrap material, and they were attempting to pull themselves up and putting, you know, pulley systems together and, you know, trying to hold each other up and spot each other. And it was just fantastic to watch them fail and learn over and over again, because that, like Paige said, they have to explore, they have to fail. And I think that's one of the things that as a teacher, I'm hoping that we see this transition, because there's been such a focus on standardized testing, where you're not supposed to fail, and it's a lot of just rinse and repeat for information, where failure is not an option. And as a designer, failure has to happen. As a scientist, failure has to happen. That's the only way that you can learn. I mean, it's the iteration process. So I hope that project-based learning really takes over more, because it gives them the opportunity to fail. It spreads out the learning process so that they have more time to explore and to verify resources. And I also just want to shout out everyone that talked about art and color. There was a fantastic, I'm going to shout out downtown right now really quick. The Louisiana Art and Science Museum had a fantastic, what am I trying to say? They had an entire piece there, a whole program that you could go to last year. And it was focused on art and science. It was music and sound and color. And I took my kids there, and it blew their mind. You know, they had the staircase with piezoelectric. So like when you jumped on it, it made the sounds. It was like the piano. And I think that those types of cross-curricular lessons are imperative, because what we hear all the time is, why am I learning this? Why am I learning this? And without those cross-curricular lessons, without that project-based exploration, it's just, they're never going to understand why they're learning it, in my opinion. Of course, I have statements. But the pulley project was dope, and there's video of it somewhere. You guys can find it. I think it's in our broadcast for the school. It's amazing. They look fantastic, and I love it so hard.
That is fantastic, and just all of the different connections. Again, you gotta tie it all together, and you gotta bring it back. So I'm gonna go to Natalie real quick.
Okay, so this was a project that we did last year. It was our kind of mid-year project, which is usually an end-of-the-year project, because I was working with the STEM Fellowship with EBR, which y'all should all consider doing, by the way. It was really amazing, and Rain can attest to that. But this was the project that I was working on for that fellowship, and it was all about heat. And we translated this into building our own kilns. So the Romans were,
What?
you know.
What? Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. That it's just too amazing to hear. Go ahead.
Yeah. If you want to follow me on Twitter, I have pinned to the top of my Twitter feed when we built them.
Yes,
so
and please.
We used bricks, and of course we always start our process for big projects like this. We always start with the ancient world, like what did the ancient Romans do to, you know, make bread, to make pottery. So we always start with the ancient, and we start by trying to read, you know, an original how-to manual about that, if there is one, because oftentimes there isn't. But there's always lots of archaeological evidence, which for me is extremely important for us to look at. In this world of fake news, I want kids to always ask the question, how do we know this for a fact? How do we know? Is it from literature? Is it from, you know, archaeological evidence? Is it from found objects? That is super important in my program. So we started with all of that. And then we took a field trip. Never, you know, Rain's talking about field trips. Field trips are awesome. So many of our students, especially at my school, don't have a chance to go to LSU and meet the pottery instructors who can talk about kilns and, you know, thermodynamic energy and all that stuff that we needed to know to build our own kilns. So then after that, we, the kids actually built small models of what they thought a good working kiln would be like. And that was kind of our testing phase of the engineering design process. And then we got a pallet of bricks. Oh my God, it was crazy. I thought I was going to lose my mind, but we did it. You know, we had the kids working in pairs, and they each built a small kiln. During this process, on days when it was raining or we couldn't work outside, the kids learned to make pottery objects. And I wanted it to be something simple. I didn't want them to have to learn how to throw pottery, because I thought that would be too difficult and out of scope. You know, we didn't have the materials for that. So instead, the kids learned how to make small votive objects. So they were learning about the daily life of ancient Romans who daily went to temples to pray to their gods about their health. And they all made, votive body parts that they would put at their temples. And we had lots of eyes because eyes were easy. We also had some booties, of course, because I teach middle school. And, you just roll with it. So we finally got to the stage where we were ready to fire up our kilns. And we did this on it was not a school day. So I got the community involved. I had parents there. I had teachers helping. And we actually did fire our kilns. This, of course, led to lots of scientific measurements about heat and energy and that kind of stuff. So they ended up not working very well, but we think we know why. So that was also part of the process. Unfortunately, right after, we kind of finished up, the pandemic shut us down. So our original plan was to build one large, actually working kiln that we could continue to use over and over again with Roman concrete. But that didn't happen. But that's, just something for the future.
Natalie, just a follow-up question. Why do you think that the kilns didn't work so well in the first
I
go around?
think that we did not we really didn't have enough bricks for what we wanted. The bricks that we ordered were not exactly what we were promised. We were promised that they would be solid bricks, and a lot of them were not. So, at that point when that happens, just have a Tim Gunn moment. You have to make it work, and it doesn't always. So, but that's a good lesson for the kids, right? And then when we disassembled our kilns, we actually counted, let's go ahead and count how many bricks were not the proper bricks. And those bricks were, 30 cents more. So how much does the company now owe us? And so it turned into a whole math problem that was just awesome. The kids handled it like pros. It was great.
That's amazing. Julia, can you bring us an example of probably your favorite project? It's okay if you have a dog in the background. We all have dogs at home.
Sorry. So I think. Sorry.
That's
I
okay.
apologize.
That's okay. He's just talking to us, or she's just talking to us.
I was first gonna say, color is the first thing we teach, and the science of how a digital image captures images. And so I think that's really important. Light is very integral to everything we do. And so we make videos. So I think inherently every project at NOVAC is a project-based PBL. But the one that I think comes to mind is more recently in COVID, we did animated shorts on constitutional amendments. And I think, and it was after, I don't know if anyone listens to More Perfect. It's a
sometimes, yes,
podcast. And so they had done songs for each constitutional amendment. And so we decided to make animated shorts. And I think that's what video lends itself really well to project-based learning projects, because it's insert content here. And so I think the challenge is watching them think through, how am I going to explain this very short, simple, but very complex idea with just visuals, with no sound, and tell my story. And so working through that, and I think what you say, iterative design is also just a part of the process, constantly evaluating what works, what could be better, is my message being perceived in the way I'm trying to deliver it? Does this color connect with this emotion, or the framing, or the shot type, or the transitions, and how visually am I pushing my story or message forward? But then also thinking there's so much math. I use I use math all the time, and I tell them you're never going to get away from this. In art, a lot of kids will be this is art class. Why are we learning about ratios and fractions and pixels? And so yeah, I think that's kind of what we do. But I mean, I have infinite examples.
Ooh, so with the constitutional one, what was your favorite video that was put out, or one of the coolest ones that you can come up with off the top of the head?
So they each picked different amendments, which was also really interesting about their understanding of their rights.
Okay.
but I think my favorite, we didn't actually get to finish a lot of them. Stop motion's very tedious. And
Right.
then there was COVID. And so we couldn't they couldn't wrap them. But I think one of my favorite ones was the women's right to vote. And so she had translated it to sort of this women empowerment and like looking at all the women who like powerful roles that women now occupy. That sort of like looking at the history of this movement and how like it didn't go through at first and like what it would be like. She like in her whole point of view is like, well, what happens if women never got this right? Like what the state of the world would be in. And that like it's our responsibility as women to actually vote and be a part of it because like we make the world, like we have better judgment. This was, so I did appreciate, and it was all pink. And I thought her transitions were really good and sort of like taking back different stereotypes that maybe have been used negatively against women. So I think that was my favorite concept. And hopefully when we return, she'll get to finish.
Yes, that sounds absolutely amazing. Allie.
So I'm lucky enough as a science teacher. I'm one of the few in the state of Louisiana that actually works really closely with the Dana Center at UT Austin to pilot a new student-led, student-driven, hands-on curriculum. So our curriculum is actually 100% project-based learning. The students start each unit off with an anchor phenomenon, and throughout, when they learn each different piece of that unit, they actually build or design a solution to a problem. So I've been lucky enough to be able to do that for the past 3 or 4 years, and seeing what our kids can do even in 6th grade is amazing. For our thermal energy unit, they actually build a Yeti cup. So they try to understand why the Starbucks cups are terrible for hot and cold beverages, but why Yeti cups are popular and why you see them all over social media and all over the world. I know whenever we did the force in motion unit, we built little mini catapults. So I love changing all of my kids into
catapults.
Yes, evil little scientists, and they were catapulting pumpkins everywhere. And my principal was mad that we had pumpkins all over the place, but it was fine because it was in the name of science. And then we did for another forces unit, they actually build an OtterBox to protect their phones and to see how high they can drop their self-made OtterBox to protect their iPhones or their tablets or their computers. Because as we know, kids in the modern world are stuck to their phones and stuck to their screens. So how can we protect them and use science to figure that out? And in our magnets unit, they actually built an electromagnet from a speaker they dissected from another unit. So it's really cool to see all these things that the kids can come up with. And one of my personal favorite things, because cells is my jam, my biochemistry background, I'm all about cells. And if you ever come into my classroom, and Paige can tell you guys, you'll hear the cell wrap playing all the time. It's what I'm really passionate about.
The cell wrap?
The cell wrap, yes. You have to look it up on YouTube. It'll be stuck in your head forever, and I love it.
I'm always down for a good rap, so.
Yes, you need to check it out, the cell wrap. And in our cell unit, I actually got, one of my friends is in charge of technology for East Baton Rouge Parish, and she purchased through a Donors Choose grant the Google Expedition glasses. So I took my kids on a virtual field trip of the cell, and they were freaking out. They were looking at viruses, they were looking at bacteria, they were comparing plant and animal cells while actually walking around and experiencing it like it's a roller coaster ride, which was amazing. That was one of my favorite moments of my teaching career.
That is amazing. Paige.
So I originally wanted to talk about our screen printing because my 7th graders do screen printing every year. And it's kind of down and dirty screen printing, but I actually
What is down and dirty screen printing?
Down and dirty screen printing is whenever you have to use what's available to you and not the expensive screen printing supplies. So like pantyhose stretched over embroidery hoops.
Yes, I love that.
But I actually want to talk about a project that I did with them after COVID started. Because it's one of my favorite projects that my kids have done to date. And when my kids went home, you know, a lot of them don't have art supplies at home. And so I thought to myself, gosh, how am I going to do this? And so I sent a survey out to my kids that had a checklist of, tell me what you actually have in your house. And it doesn't have to be an art supply. Like, do you have fruit? Do you have berries? Do you have food or spices in your spice cabinet? And so when we started doing classes again, when we were all virtual, we did pigments out of their kitchens. So they had to find stuff in their kitchen. So like cayenne pepper, blueberries, anything that they had that they could then kind of mush down or mix with oil or water or egg, which brought us back to the ancient times, like Natalie was talking about, because we go over how they used to mix their own pigments and what they would mix them with. And so my kids were mixing their own pigments with all these things they found in their kitchen. Coffee. I had a kid whose mom was like, "Where's my coffee? Why did you take my coffee?" He's over there painting with it. And it became a family-wide project because a lot of my kids were at home with younger siblings. And so their siblings were coming in and trying to figure out what they were doing. And the younger kids really weren't having very much virtual at the time. And so I would have on my Google Meets, I would have like the older kid who's actually in my class teaching the younger kid, okay, and this is how you mash it into, you know, the bowl, and you can mix it with this and it will do this color. And so my kids were learning by teaching. So,
That's
and then
amazing.
you know, parents were involved. It became an entire family-wide project. And when they had to present their paintings that they did, you know, I had them do flip grids, where they record little short videos, and their entire families were in the flip grids, you know, where like the little sister would be like, and I did that part. So it was a lot of fun. I think that's one of my favorite connections that I've had as an educator, not just with my kids, but I was able to connect with their families.
That is absolutely amazing. So we've been touching on it a whole time because, as we all know, we're in a pandemic. So I'm gonna flip it to, I've got a two-parter here. Actually, you know what? I'm just gonna go with the one part. How has your use of tech and how you're delivering your teaching changed during the pandemic? What tools are you using that you love, that you want to tell other teachers about or educators about right now? Rain.
Well, it's kind of interesting because we do and do not have a lot of flexibility in what we're able to use. So I think most of us are in East Baton Rouge, and so that probably means we're all on Google Classroom, which means that we have to use Google Meets for meeting. I don't know that that's the best platform. There's a lot of options.
I saw a lot of eyes there.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to not make it too opinionated, but yeah, there's a lot of other options out there, and I think as teachers, I think we struggle with the ability to have the freedom that we need to do what we know it's best sometimes. And it's interesting to see a top-down approach happen when you're on the ground, if you will, and in the trenches, especially right now. And so we're kind of pushed into using certain things that may or may not be effective. And then we're iterating like on the fly, trying to figure out how to navigate this technology with or without a PD that helped us learn it. And, you know, maybe we're used to something else that would have made it easier to use and to do our jobs. So we're using Google Meets. Google Meets has adapted to having breakout rooms now. You can have it as an extension and things like that. And so, you know, for some of us, it might be easier to navigate that technology because we might already come from a world where we're utilizing technology pretty regularly. But I think it's been a really big struggle for a lot of teachers. And trying to create a way to get the kids to be engaged on the technology and to ensure that they're accountable on the technology with cameras on, and, you know, how do you get them to participate in a class discussion? And so it's been really fascinating just figuring this out. I don't know that anyone has completely figured it out yet. I mean, like, please let me know. Yeah. But, you know, one of the things, you know, Paige mentioned Flipgrid. I try to give them a lot of independent time right now because, I mean, honestly, it just feels like I'm talking to a screen sometimes. But, you know, in the vein of safety, I would prefer that at this moment. But for me, Flipgrid's been really good. Getting them to do interactive presentations. So I'll put them in little breakout rooms, whether it's using Teams or Google Breakout or anything that I can find really. And then I'll have them navigate. One of the things that has been really good though, that I like about the virtual teaching with the technology is that I get my personal experience is that I've had much better one-on-one conversations with my kids when I can take them into a separate room. For example, GoGuardian is a platform that we use to monitor their screens so that we can see what they're doing and hold them accountable. And one of the things that I can do is open up a tab for them. So I can go onto their screen and open up a tab remotely. So if they're kind of lost, I can give them some research to look at. And, you know, maybe that's not their forte yet. They're not great at research and they're not really sure what's fake information or not. And I'm like, don't do that. Here's a better one. And I'm able to actually call them now. So GoGuardian's adapted to including a call feature where I can actually like talk to them one-on-one just through that. So I don't have to use as many platforms. But as far as engagement, letting them do simulations online, like using PHET or any of those type, that's like a fun science simulator, or having them join other type of classrooms like CK12, which is a really great open source classroom that you can use. That seems to help because they have more interactive games that they can do. But it's been a struggle. It really has. And also it's been a struggle, and then I'm going to pass this on. Our kids grew up with phones pretty much in their hands at all times. And it is fascinating to see how little they know about how to use their technology. Like you would think that, you know, all of us being a little older, that like they would run circles around you. Absolutely not at all. And they have zero idea. I mean, this, again, my opinion, not that much of a great idea about security, online security, and how to make sure that they're safe online and that they're using their technology safe online. So
That
for the parents out there,
another
please,
whole
please,
discussion.
please go through online security with your kids, because
Definitely.
we can see what they do online when we're with them, and it's a little scary. It's a little scary. Just gonna say that.
I bet, yeah, definitely. Natalie.
Because I know that we're almost done with this panel, I'm going to keep this short and say that I feel brains pain here and all of us are struggling right now. A particular struggle for me has been assessment. How do you assess a student that you know has all access to, the internet on a phone, on another device or whatnot? My answer to that has been just to do so many more formative assessments, assessments that I can see, what you're doing right now. Or I love Google Jamboard. I'm going to shout out Google Jamboard. It's great. It allows you to move things around on the screen. If I'm watching them on GoGuardian, I can see them, what they're doing. And it's easy visual tool that makes some little fun activities that you can do with them. I'm also going to say that I like to think that I try not to think that my students are doing bad stuff, although I know that some of them are not doing things they're supposed to, but I always try to remember, you just don't know what's going on at home. I had one little boy, a 6th grader, who turned on his microphone one day to tell me something, and his camera, and he had literally a younger child, maybe 4 years old, who was like yelling at him, screaming at him, doing this in his face. And it's like, she's my cousin. She lives here. There's nothing I can do, and my parent is busy working, and she's kind of my responsibility. I have students who sit in the library all day long because their parents are not home to care for them. They've got a mask on. I mean, in this situation, you just have to give people as much grace as possible. And I try to extend that to my colleagues, to my administrators, to my parents, and to my students, and try to remember that in 20 years, when this is over, let's hope it's over sooner than that, but in years in the future, I just want my students to remember, Ms. Roy was kind to me.
Yes, that's definitely a big part of everything. We've got about 3 minutes left, so I'm going to try and hit go through our last 3 panelists a minute each. So Julia, if you could talk to what you guys are doing in COVID.
Yeah, I was going to say, so as NOVAC, we don't actually operate inside a traditional school system, which I think in a lot of ways gives us a lot more flexibility. so we use Zoom to deliver our live classrooms. But I think we piloted some ideas. We did a lot of research at the beginning of the summer, and I think our approach, like really just letting go of how you think about a traditional classroom or education, and like starting from scratch. And so we've adopted sort of like a flipped classroom model where really like we view our roles as instructors as a facilitator, and then all the structures and resources we're providing allow the student like to learn on their own, so that I am no longer like the person that holds this power of education. Like I'm giving them everything, and I'm more of just like a support or resource for them to help like discover and deepen their learning. And again, like this goes back to tech and access, and like we've come up with really creative solutions to help kids in terms of like software and ability to access our curriculum, but there's still like hotspots and internet and like being flexible around that. I would say like I really love Loom, which is like a way to record. So we basically like our entire classroom that would have been delivered in person is recorded and on an online platform. And then our live sessions are really like building community connections, like discovery, deepening learning. And I think a lot of the silver linings is, I think what Rain said about one-on-one connections, but also them in the past, especially like because we're teaching like Adobe software programs, they really only have the ability to work on our content when they're with us. And so when actually in this environment, we'd be able to reach kids in like rural Louisiana have been able to participate in our classes, and they're actually able to like sit with the material, and like they have more time to explore, like more space to fail and start over again because they're not restricted by like a class time. And so I think that's been like a really nice silver lining, and just to see kids building relationships like across city, like from all over the state. I think that's been
amazing.
Really fun for us, like for me to watch and hear them talk about things in all their different perspectives.
That's fantastic. We've got about a minute or so left, or maybe a little less if we can go to Allie and then Paige.
Sure. So first of all, I want to shout out to every teacher in the entire world right now. We've had to become technology unicorns and wizards, and every teacher is doing the very best that they possibly can, sacrificing time with their families, with their significant others, and any other aspect of their life to make education work. So they all deserve a shout out for that. But I think keeping in mind what's keeping me afloat right now and not losing hope in the struggle that we're having every single day is that I teach kids first and I teach content second. So keeping that in mind, that my kids come first, their emotional wellness and their health, and just hearing them laugh is what's more important to me than necessarily teaching them a skill. So it's trying to just stay afloat throughout all the struggles that we have going on, just remembering that kids come first and content comes second.
Love that. Love that. And Paige?
I'm going to build on what Allie said. I use Google Voice a lot so that my parents and kids can directly text me. And I have found that my kids who don't participate, usually even if they're in the classroom, they don't participate because they're shy, or if they don't want to participate on the Google Meet, they will text me what is going, like they will text me how they're feeling or their answers and stuff like that. So I think that one-on-oneness has definitely been better since we've been virtual, because it gives them that outlet. And also, like Allie said, I just have to remind myself every day, I'm here for my kids first. Every single day, I'm here for them first.
I love that. I want to just thank all of you ladies for today. Thank you for all the teachers that are out there, all the educators that are out there right now, learning on the fly all these technologies for their students, for their kids' families. You guys are amazing, and what you guys do every day is amazing. And don't let anyone ever tell you that it's not. And we're going to go to Jessica for commercial break.